Okay, we're back. The second segment of Take It to the House. Drew Robinson here with Alex Deitch talking about the NFL. Just to wrap up on the NFL playoffs, let's talk about the four teams. We've done this a little bit, but just to wrap it up, let's talk about the we've got a little dog make things fall. That's part of it. It's part of podcasting at your house. So let's talk about the Texans and the Packers real quick. What any thoughts about them looking forward? I think we had kind of said they're both on an upward trajectory,
right?
But anything jumping out to you about those two teams as they look forward?
I think just that they're so young that you're not having to worry about paying anyone, and so I feel like the recipe to success, is still there. Unlike, we'll talk about the Bucs in a second, but when you got a young team that's really talented, and it seems like a great receiving group kind of coming up together with a young quarterback, I'm excited. I thought their defense the last few weeks played actually pretty well, considering most of the season they looked very average. So that was a little encouraging, that the fact they can do it. And so, yeah, I think I don't want to put too much pressure on them so early, but at the same time, I'm expecting, some big things next year, And with the Texans, same thing. I thought, C.J. Stroud was amazing. I think, I don't think he'll have, a huge sophomore slump, but I do think it won't come quite as easy. And teams, like you said, we were talking about this last week, get a little film on you, I mean, that makes a big difference. Even Patrick Mahomes and some of these other superstar quarterbacks have had years where it's a little down because it's they just learn how to disguise coverages, and so it's new things that you're not necessarily have seen before. But overall, I feel like, great young head coach and a great young quarterback, that's a good start. So,
Yeah. I think C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love are already, pretty the teams are invested in them.
Yes.
So not only are the teams behind them, but it's going to be an interesting next 3 years, 2 to 3 years for both of those teams.
Yeah.
Because this is the time when we have seen before, a team looks good early. And then Jared Goff with the Rams, right?
Right.
They get to a Super Bowl, they lose a Super Bowl, and then next year doesn't go too well, and then
Right.
by the year after that, it's kind of they're ready to get rid of you. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting with Jordan Love and C.J. Stroud because, they both seem like. They both seem like they've got great potential. I mean, I like their demeanor. I like, kind of who they are. They're not kind of building their success on just talent or charisma, which talent and charisma is great. But you worry a little bit sometimes about the talent and the charisma when that can sometimes take over. And even with a situation like Josh Allen, I feel like he's got to kind of get back to asking himself, how is he going to win a Super Bowl?
Yeah.
And, sometimes I think it's easy, and I feel like maybe the Bills have done this a little bit. I know I'm sidetracking with the Bills, but I feel like a little bit like the Bills sort of, the organization has kind of taken on this attitude of we're good at the quarterback position.
Right.
We've got to give him weapons. We've got to build around him. We've got to solidify our defense. And not that any of those things aren't true.
Right.
But Josh Allen has got work to do.
Yeah.
He's got to get better. He's not good enough, and I think that Mahomes, even though I'm a little irritated with Mahomes and the Chiefs. I don't think Mahomes can kind of look back on this season and say, I've really got to get better. Maybe he's got to get better as a leader and make his teammates better. But Patrick Mahomes had a lot of people around him dropping passes, and Patrick Mahomes kind of was doing his job
Right.
for most of the year. Josh Allen, I think there's some blame that can be squarely placed on his
Definitely.
shoulders. So, with the Bills, that's that. And then with the Bucks, I'm a little bit concerned, just as any fan would be, that Baker's going to need to get paid. He should get paid. I hope there's a way to sort of defer that, or
Right.
position them in a way that they can get more people. I feel like we need another pass rusher.
Yeah.
I feel like Shaq Barrett isn't quite what he was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Vea's good. Levante David's good. I think, this Brit linebacker has kind of taken over for
Devin
Devin
Yeah.
White. I feel like our secondary is pretty darn good. I feel you can always use a couple more DBs. I would love to see us get one more tight end and one more big receiver.
Right.
I think Palmer and Moore really stepped up, and I think Godwin and Evans are still going to be there and be really good. I think our running back had a great year, and even the guy that sort of subbed in for him was pretty good at running back. So O-line, I feel like was decent, better than it was last year for Brady,
Right.
because we had so many injuries last year. But the Bucks have just gotta keep going, and hopefully they can. I feel like the Bucks and the Lions. Yeah, maybe the Texans and the Packers too, but I feel like the Bucks and the Lions are really, really unified teams.
Yeah.
And that starts with the leader. I think Todd Bowles is outstanding.
Yeah.
I think Dan Campbell is outstanding.
Right.
I like the Bills head coach. I like LaFleur, and I like Shanahan, and I like John Harbaugh. There's a lot of, and I like Andy Reid.
Right.
Andy Reid's just. He's. I guess now that Belichick's out, Andy Reid's probably the greatest coach that's still coaching
Right.
in the league.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think some of these older school guys, and Todd Bowles is an older school guy, but I feel like Todd Bowles hasn't been a head coach for that long, but I think he really understands, because of all his years as a position coach, probably the same as Dan Campbell, is it's not all about scheme.
Right.
And I feel like younger players have got to be, I would hate to use the word coddled as one of those words like quit,
Right.
that you just don't want to really use that word. It's a bad word, but players need to feel like they're respected.
Right.
It's a generational thing. I do feel like Andy Reid is a little bit like, hey, show up and do your job.
Right.
And if, I don't really care if you get your feelings hurt.
Well, and he's been in the league so long, I think it's more like he has that.
And I don't know that Dan Campbell or Todd Bowles is overly concerned with players' feelings.
Right.
But I also think that they have connection skills
Right.
with players. And it's not that they're just a player's coach.
Right.
They're leaders, but they have connection skills. And I think that's what, amongst other things, but I think that's what got John Gruden out of the league.
Yeah.
Ultimately, is John Gruden was not a connection guy.
Yeah.
He was he was charismatic and he was a winner. But, if you look at John Gruden's whole coaching career, he had a lot more disappointing seasons than he had great seasons.
Right.
And he pissed a lot of people off every day. And he did not care.
Right.
And it's just, coaching is different. Generational players are different, and you're talking about, you what are you, 24? 25?
26, actually.
You're 26.
I know.
Jeez, Alex, But you know what? You're actually probably on the high end. You're probably on the high end of the average NFL player's age.
Right.
I mean, isn't that weird to think
I
about?
know
That
it's so
probably there are more people in the NFL that are younger than you
I know
than are
it's
older than you.
crazy.
Yeah, it is, and
You
it
age so quick.
yeah, it's a weird thing when you start saying that about the coaches in the
Right.
NFL that they're more younger coaches. But and I'm past that point. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see how they're going forward. I love Todd Bowles, and and let's now talk about this week, and we can kind of transition. And I'll tell you this, and I've said this since the playoffs started. I don't I don't I don't see anybody stopping the Lions.
Yeah.
Um, I think the Lions are going to go into San Francisco and they're going to win. They're going to force Brock Purdy to make a few mistakes. And I love Brock Purdy as a guy, and I think he's right on the edge of being really good. I hope he can get over that hump and be great because I love
Right.
the 49ers. But I like the 49ers as an organization more than I like the Lions. But the when you put the storyline of everything that Detroit has been through, it's kind of like the Red Sox a few years ago. I was never a Red Sox fan or even a Cubs fan, but when those teams start to win and they've
Right.
never won, or it's been so long, you just feel for those fans,
Right. It's
and you're
easy to get
just
behind them. Yeah.
it is, and so I've got a good problem to have in the NFC because I like both of these teams. I think the Lions are going to win. I think they're going to go in there and they just look like a team that's not going to be denied.
Right.
And so I look for the Lions to go in there and win. And then in the AFC, I think the Ravens are just a better team this year. They're going to be at home. I think I don't know. Even though the Chiefs and the Bills was a good game, and even though those are two really talented teams, um, I think that Lamar Jackson is better than Josh Allen, and I think the
Yeah.
Ravens are a better team than the Bills,
Yeah. 100%.
and they're going to be at home. And I think the Chiefs are not going to be able to overcome the Ravens at home. And then if it's Lions Ravens and I'm right, which you've been more right than me in this playoffs, but I would take the Lions. But anyway, looking forward, what are your thoughts? Not just predictions, but on the games coming up.
Yeah. I like you. I believe in the Lions. I think going back to what you said about John Gruden and Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell gets everything he can out of his players, and guys, whether they're battling through injuries, the guys want his leadership is undeniable. And so I think when you're able to get that extra 5%, 10% from a player, especially in these big moments, in these big playoff games, it's huge. Whereas, John Gruden, a guy might not try and battle an injury or fight through it as much when his head coach is a lot more rigid or he feels like, they just don't have that personal connection. So going back to the game, I think the Lions O-line and them being able to run the ball is going to be important, especially after seeing the success that Green Bay had. I think Jahmyr Gibbs had a couple explosive runs yesterday where,
Yeah,
he doesn't really even have the angle, but then he creates one, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, he made Antoine Winfield look slow, and Antoine Winfield's like an all-pro safety. And so,
Yeah.
and then David Montgomery, obviously doesn't have that speed and explosiveness, but he's still explosive, and he's, a big physical back, and
Right.
so, you start to wear down that D-line, and, Jared Goff has been in a rhythm. I think it's a lot of pressure on those DBs. What do they want to stop? I think right now the Lions offense looks just amazing, and so there's a lot of pressure, like, how are we going to scheme? What do we want to try and focus on? I feel like there's so many weapons right now, it's like hard to zero in on one. And then for the 49ers, I think, a big part of their game plan is Deebo Samuel, even with just misdirection, that opens things up for Christian McCaffrey and other guys. And Brandon Ayuk had a quiet, over 1,000-yard season. So, they have like, obviously Brock Purdy has weapons, it's just is he going to be in a good situation where he's got, his on time and rhythm throws? Because I think if you force him to like create some plays, I think that's where they'll get in trouble. So obviously I think they'll look to lean to McCaffrey, but I have the Lions winning. I think that, uh, and I think it's just in the trend. I think the Lions being able to run the ball successfully and then protect Goff is ultimately going to be the difference. And then Ravens and the Chiefs. I don't like betting against Patrick Mahomes, but I really think there's a whole lot more pressure on Lamar this year than there ever has been.
Yeah.
To kind of get over that hump and winning in the playoffs, he's not really done. And, beating the Texans handily is nice, but, the Texans weren't, you could say they arguably were snuck in or weren't supposed to be there. And so it's just, I think that defense is just so good. I think, Mahomes is going to have to be, I don't think they can make any mistakes. I think if the Chiefs turn the ball over, I think that's really the deciding factor. But I feel like that could be kind of a low-scoring game. Believe it or not, actually, I think the Chiefs' defense has really buckled down. And if they can, contain Lamar in the pocket, it reminds me a couple years ago when the Titans played him. Now I think Lamar's a lot better than he was several years ago. But, had the spy, and then they would just squeeze the pocket, They weren't necessarily trying to rush the passer, just squeeze the pocket and make them beat you just, throwing out routes and down the field. Then I think they have a real shot. Because I think the Chiefs' back end is pretty respectable and solid. And I think L'Jarius Sneed was even all-pro. So I feel like, this is going to be like just a solid defensive game. But I think I have the Ravens. I know it went on a little long there, but I just feel like there's more on the line for them, for their franchise, for Lamar, and I feel like they're almost due.
Yeah, and I also think when it comes down to it, the Chiefs, I guess, they're the champs, right? They're the premier team of the league. They're the team that they expect to go to the Super Bowl and they expect to win.
Right.
I think the Ravens, even though Lamar hasn't, and it's been a while, I think John Harbaugh gets it. Obviously, he's won a Super Bowl. And I think the Ravens just have, they have that expectation.
Right.
The 49ers sort of feel like, I don't know. They feel like a conference championship team, but they don't feel like a Super Bowl champion.
Right.
The Lions. It's interesting with the Lions because sometimes, like if the Bucks had squeezed by the Lions and then the Bucks somehow wiggled into the Super Bowl, that would have been one of those sort of Cinderella story kind of team of destiny kind of things. And when you look at the history of the NFL, the last 40 years of the Super Bowl era, the last 50 years, the Lions are nowhere to be found.
Right.
But when you look at this season from the beginning of the year all the way through, this Lions team is for real.
Yeah.
They are not a Cinderella story. They're not somebody that's just come out of nowhere.
Right.
They deserve to be here, and I think they expect that nobody's going to stop them. And depending on if they come up short or if they win at all, it doesn't matter. Dan Campbell is going to keep. I mean, they're going to be around for a little while.
Yeah.
And they're going to be a team to be reckoned with for a little while. So. I do think when you look at the Lions, defensively, I almost feel like, especially if Samuel doesn't play, I almost feel like the Bucks were a little bit tougher to prepare for than the 49ers will be.
Right.
I feel like Purdy will be a little bit easier to rattle than Baker. If you're the Niners, the Lions are a completely different challenge than the Packers were. And then again, the Chiefs. I think the Ravens are like the Bills, but they're better.
Right.
And now, and then the downside to the Ravens is you haven't seen anything like the Chiefs yet.
Right.
At least in the playoffs.
Right.
So the Ravens have had their share of challenges this year, but it feels like the Ravens and the Lions are the best teams that have been there all year.
Yeah.
The Chiefs, out of these four teams, have probably had the collective worst season of these four remaining teams.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs are the champs.
Right.
They're the Chiefs, so they're not surprised at all to be where they are. So it's going to be a great championship weekend. I think it's going to be fun. You, by the way, Alex Dietz, if you count the national championship game, which we both had Michigan, so it just makes both of us look a little better. But you are 10-1 right now. I am 7-4.
Okay.
You were sitting at 8-1. I was at 7-2 until yesterday, and I had Tampa Bay and Buffalo yesterday. So I went down two more games. So you are now 3 games up with 3 games left.
Right.
And so I almost have to go against your picks just to hope to tie. But I think we're picking the same things. I think we've both got the.
I don't know, man.
Have we both got the Lions and we both got the Ravens?
Is that right? We both have
right?
the Lions. I'm still up in the air. I feel like you said, the Ravens have been the better team all year. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to pick against the Chiefs. I feel after seeing, Kelsey's. This was the first time Kelsey scored since they said week 11. So if he's kind of they're getting in a little rhythm again. Pacheco's running the ball well. Rashee Rice, he looked a little banged up yesterday. He's taking some hits out there. It's a physical game, but he's had a nice season, kind of coming out party. Valdez-Scantling made a couple tough catches. This is the last thing you want to see if you're a Raven team. The receivers are starting to catch the ball. And Mahomes' favorite target is finally getting hot, getting some catches. And
well, we'll take another break, Alex. I'm going to let you off the hook. You'll have until we come back to make your pick. But let's wrap up segment 2. We got a couple miscellaneous things we're going to talk about in the next segment, which will be fun. And we'll be right back. This is Take It to the House.